All right. Hello, everyone. Uh, Welcome to Climate Tucson's September meeting, and we're featuring Keith Gregory, Housing Director for the Pascua Yaqui Tribe. And as I get distracted, I'm sorry, I have to get people in from the waiting room. Keith will be filling us in on the exciting new and groundbreaking housing project that the tribe announced in mid-August. I'll be turning the stage over to Keith shortly. Uh, but I have two business items. And the first, as most of you are probably aware of and are celebrating, Mayor Regina Romero and Councilmember Paul Durham last week announced their climate emergency declaration, which the council will be voting on this coming Wednesday the 9th. The council meeting is live online. It starts at 5:30. I sent a note to Climate Tucson members on Meetup with links to the meeting and to a message of support created by the Arizona Youth Climate Coalition. Signatures on the message will be brought before the mayor and council as, quote, evidence of public support. I also included contact information for the mayor and council members and a template for an email to them that you can easily personalize. If any of you want a copy, send me an email at karen@climatetucson.com, Karen @climatetucson.com, and I'll forward it to you. The important thing is that we all show our support for the emergency declaration. I think it's more than obvious that we are living in an emergency, especially this summer. Next, I'm also thrilled to report that next month, Climate Tucson celebrates its first anniversary. I am so excited. And what a year. We started out in cozy little rooms in Ward 6, and we have moved online. So far, so good. I am so appreciative and grateful that you have joined me loyally in this pursuit of knowledge about the most important event on our lifetimes, our changing climate. And I know I speak for all members of Climate Tucson when I say that we are also extremely grateful to the roster of speakers who have joined us each month. We have learned at the feet of the best climate scientists and researchers in the world, and all of them are from the University of Arizona. Tucson and our lives are richer for their dedication to science and their willingness to spend time with us. We were a rapt audience, and we asked great questions. All the speakers said that. As Climate Tucson moves into its second year, I'm expanding our focus to include examples of what is being done, not just to reduce our carbon footprint, but to ensure the needs of our entire community, not a select demographic. Which leads me to tonight's presentation. The Pascua Yaqui, with their upcoming housing project, are creating a new direction for affordable housing, one that is changing the face of home ownership and breaking down barriers. There will be a Q&A. If you could use the chat function, if you can look down at the bottom of your screen and send questions to me, I'll read them for Keith when his talk concludes. And with that, I'm turning it over to Keith.
How's everybody doing? I just really want to thank you for inviting me and allowing me to present to you this afternoon's early evening, I guess. I see some of you already eating. I'm a little jealous because I'm really hungry. I skipped lunch today, so so bear with me if you hear my stomach growling or anything like that. Just ignore it. It's not a thing because y'all are like it's gonna make me jealous. I'm sitting there watching people snack. So my name is Keith Gregory. I am currently the Director of Housing for the Pascua Yaqui Tribe. We are really excited. We were given a great opportunity to do some really innovative projects, and our first, what I think anyway, is a really innovative project is launching hopefully here in a couple of months, where we will be diving into the first of 3 phases of what we're calling the Yaqui Square Development Project, but the first phase is called Our Desert Homes. The Yaqui pronunciation of the word is Pohco'oria Kari'm, which means Our Desert Homes. I can't take credit for the name. I actually had to ask staff if they could help me come up with a good name, because one of the things that's very important in the tribe is to use culturally appropriate titles and names for things. So I was very excited. I thought it was a really cool name. So if I don't mess this up, I will share my screen so everybody can see. Let's see here. Uh-oh. It says I can't screen share yet. There we go. All right. And I will share that screen. Cool. And, all right. Thumbs up. We can all see the screen, see the presentation. Good. All right. Excellent. All right. So, so my presentation, and I'm not really good at naming things. Oh. So I tend to be fairly literal with things. So we're gonna talk about creativity and development, but as it relates to, I think, kind of the mission of this group, we're gonna talk about how that is important for sustainability. And as an added bonus, I promise you, there are actual giraffes, goats, and rhinos in this presentation. They are all a very, very key part of the presentation. I promise you, it's gonna be awesome. Okay, so first up, the giraffe. Right, so funny story, I used to work for the city of Tucson, and one of the cool things, obviously the city of Tucson runs the Reed Park Zoo, and occasionally they have these kind of behind the scenes excursions for like staff and other like VIP members of the zoo. I am not by any means a VIP member of the zoo. I am just, at the time I was staff, so I got to go and do this behind the scenes tour thing. What was really cool is we got to hang out with an actual with the giraffes at the zoo, and they come right next to you, head next to your head, and hang out. They're very, very friendly. But fun fact, which I didn't know this at all, their tongues are black because, you know, where they live there's a lot of sun, and it actually keeps them from getting sunburnt on their tongues, which is like amazing to me. So the fun part about this picture is that the giraffe is not interested in me at all. It's really my selfie. The giraffe could care less what I was doing. But I learned that, you know, their tongues are that color simply to keep them from being sunburned, which here is very useful. I am amazed that my tongue hasn't gotten sunburned as much as I'm eating outside. So just, you know, things that you learn when you kind of hang out in certain places. All right, so let's really get into the presentation. The Pascua Yaqui Tribe and our housing division in particular, we really at this point are trying very hard to push for kind of a three topics: bigger, better, and bolder, right? And what that means is, to us, in everything that we're doing, we either want to be bigger, we either want to be getting better, or we want to be doing something bolder that's never been done before. And I call it our not so secret motto because if you ask anybody on my staff, if you ask me, if you ask anybody at the tribe, they will tell you that pushing the envelope is really where we want to be, and it's what we want to do as an organization. And from what I understand, historically, the tribe has always been an innovator in tribal administration and government administration and all the different things that they do. So for me, to kind of be able to boil it down into three words and say, this is us. You know, when you hear a project from us, I would hope that when you see it, you're thinking, well, this is either bigger, it is either better, or it is either bolder than everything that has come before. And I think the project we're going to talk about today really kind of talks to all three of those, because as for those of you who haven't seen the articles, it is one of, if not the, we're trying to confirm because I really, really want to be able to tell people that I have the biggest project ever, but it is very much one of the largest projects that the tax credit funded projects that has ever been done on tribal land anywhere in the state of Arizona. And we believe that it is the largest that has ever been done. From a perspective of just about every creativity, housing type, the standard of living, sustainability, all of it, it is truly a better project than we have ever done in our past. And most importantly, it is the boldest vision and the boldest step we've ever taken to really shift the way people see affordable housing, period. Not just on tribal lands, but affordable housing citywide. If you look at, you know, city of Tucson, if you look at Pima County, I want people to see that the Pascua Yaqui Tribe's housing division as the leader in creative, bold, innovative steps for housing. So a little bit about me, simply because you brought me here, so I figured I should tell you who I am. You might want to tell somebody, right? I went to the University of Pittsburgh, and I graduated in 2002, which to me seems like a really long time ago. Though when I tell that to my mother, she laughs at me and tells me I just better pray that I get to see how long, you know, she's been alive. So I'm hopeful for that. You know, I've been in the affordable housing business for 14 years. And I've had just some of the most amazing experiences throughout that time. And one of the interesting things about me, it's not about me. It's actually my mother grew up in public housing in Louisville, Kentucky. I never grew up in public housing, but what I love about the fact that I get to work in the industry is I have someone who is a free, and she doesn't always like being a free unpaid consultant, but she's a free consultant to me. I can always call my mother up and say, okay, how would this have worked when you lived in public housing? Or what programs would you have needed when you were there? And she has helped to guide so many of the things that I've done because she's been just this real experienced person I can lean on to kind of give me advice. And I think that's really one of the reasons I've been able to do so well and be in this business for so long is that I've just been blessed to be around some really awesome people who can give me some really cool feedback. The list of places I lived is lengthy, and the more that I look at it, I feel like I should be ashamed, but I've had some just awesome opportunities. I've lived with some amazing people and in some amazing places. I started my career in Pittsburgh. I grew up in Indiana. I lived in Chicago twice. I lived in Florida, here obviously in Tucson, and I spent a year in Juneau, Alaska, which I will tell you, if you've never been to Alaska, go. It is the most naturally beautiful place I think I've ever been. I mean, you wake up in the morning, you've got the ocean, you've got bay, you have whales that come up in the bay every morning, and you can hear them and see them from the mountains that you live in. And it's, you got snow-capped mountains and glaciers, and it's unbelievable. To be fair, I have learned that I'm a city boy, and Juneau is not the city. Juneau, Alaska is at peak tourist season, it's 35 to 40,000 people, and it's a peninsula. So you are surrounded on three sides by water, and the fourth side is a giant unpassable mountain. So not only are you stuck, on three sides, but the only way off of Juneau is by airplane or by boat. You can't take a car. There's actually, if you go on the highway, there are signs that tell you how far it is until the road ends. And when they say the road ends, it actually just stops. Like you get to the end, there's a cul-de-sac, you turn around and come back. It goes forever, but once you get to the end, it's just the end. But it's beautiful. I mean, and horrifying. Now that I think about it, it's kind of both. I saw a bear. I kid you not, and it sounds crazy, but I've seen this in person. They always tell you if you see a bear foraging through food, leave it alone. Don't mess with it. And you say, well, I'm not gonna mess with a bear anyway. It isn't until you see one in person that you understand why. A bear, natural outdoor disc bear, is at least 8 feet tall when it stands up, which I consider myself a tall guy. I'm 6 feet tall. It's really weird that an animal could stand up and be 2 feet taller than me. They weigh 800 to 1,600 pounds, and they can run at up to 35 miles an hour. So picture for a minute an animal that weighs almost a ton that can move as fast as your car. I always told people when I was working, I was like, listen, if a bear starts chasing us, my goal is not to outrun the bear. It's only to outrun you. This is my thing. I just have to survive this encounter. But the craziest thing, so I was looking at apartments, and there was a bear that was going through the trash and trying to get food out of the trash. But they have special trash cans in Alaska that they have a special cap that you can't just open. So where I'm from, raccoons get in your trash, they throw your trash everywhere. In Alaska, bears are the issue. So the craziest thing was, I'm watching a bear he's scratching at this garbage can, trying to get it open. He can't get it open. He finally takes his claws and just pokes them on both hands into the garbage can and rips it in half. I couldn't believe what I had seen. I mean, he literally with his own strength, he just forced his claws into it and then ripped the garbage can in half. So, and this is a good, it's not even the garbage cans we have. It's like thicker than the garbage cans we have. He just ripped it in. I was in awe and horrified at the same time. And but again, don't let that deter you from going. It is a beautiful, amazing place. And the people are really wonderful. There's great food. There's a lot of history. I work for the Tlingit-Haida Regional Housing Authority, and the Tlingit-Haida people there just have a great culture and a great history. So it's really amazing. And I really got off topic, and I apologize. I do that from time to time. I've been involved in about $500 million in development nationwide. I've done, everything from multi-story, apartment buildings to, rehabs where we took an old hospital and turned it into apartment buildings. As mentioned, I've worked both for Native American tribes and for public housing tribes. So I work for the city of Tucson's Housing and Community Development Department, the Aurora Housing Authority, the Pittsburgh Housing Authority. So my career has been kind of all over the place. And as mentioned, I'm currently the director of the Pascua Yaqui Tribe's housing department. So second animal, goats. Right? So a little bit, I am the kind of person who just loves to do ridiculous things. This was not at the zoo. Just, I want you to picture this, and this may be why I'm not at the city anymore. It's not, but officially. But so this was, we were hosting just kind of an employee appreciation event. And on a dare, I jokingly said, I'm going to bring goats to the party. I want to be the guy that brings goats to a party. And everybody said, you're not going to bring goats to the party. You're not, nobody's bringing goats to a party. And one of the things I promise you, you can, if you want to convince me to do something, tell me that I can't or shouldn't do it. And then I almost have to do it, right? So I searched around. Just so happened, our current mayor, and I love our current mayor, one of her aides was overheard this conversation. I was telling her I wanted to bring goats to a park. She said, I can actually get you goats. I said, no, you can't. You can't actually get me goats. She said, I will get you goats if you tell me when the party is. So I tell her, I pay for it out of my own pocket, and she brought 3 goats to work. That area behind you is the Housing and Community Development Department of the city of Tucson. Those goats were live, running around the courtyard, making a mess. We put out hay for them. It was hilarious. I told the city manager, I invited him. I don't think he found it as amusing as I did, so he didn't attend, but it was just one of those things. We had a great time. They were the selfie goats. They took pictures with everybody. They were like the star of the show. But so now that's 2 of the 3 animals. I'll get to the rhino in a moment. All right, enough goofy. You actually brought me here to talk about a project. So let's talk project. When I think about development and when I think about what it can mean for communities and what it can mean for people, we have to look at the ways that development and sustainability can be married, right? Because far too often, developers, when they're planning out their projects, they say, well, I'm going to build this and I'm going to just use whatever materials make sense. And that's going to be it. That's going to be another project. And I will tell you that there are really 2 kinds of developers. There are those that are just really looking to, build 18 or 80 or 800 of the same box. And they take that box and they just want to replicate that process. They make their money, they move on. But a lot of people got into the development business because they're dreamers. They really do envision a better world. And so the first thing on there is we must incentivize creativity in real estate development because developers love notoriety. I'm not different from them in that sense. We all want to be seen as the person who did this great, wonderful thing or who built these wonderful buildings, who had this positive impact. So if we find ways as a community to encourage developers to do sustainability and to do green development and use renewable resources, then all of a sudden we will. Developers are a really interesting group because they want, it's a weird kind of thing. Most developers want their name on stuff. That's why a lot of development companies are named after the people that run them. They all want to have their names on things. So if you find a way to encourage them to do things that are a little bit outside of the box, that benefit the community and benefit the environment and benefit all of our goals of sustainability, they'll do it because everybody wants to be seen as having the coolest green project on the block. We're in a moment in time where that is the most exciting thing that developers can be doing. So we're always looking for ways to do that, but it's oftentimes financially difficult. Not all the time, but oftentimes. Or developers just don't really want to do the mental work to figure out whether or not it pencils or not, so they don't. If we provide incentives for them to do it, all of a sudden you'll start to see these brilliant, beautiful ideas that incorporate green space, incorporate all the things that you really want to see in a sustainable development. But it starts at a point of the incentive. Developers, as much as we all are dreamers, we're also a very practical bunch. The project has to make money. The only way that a developer makes money is if the project gets built. So we have to be able to get a project from point A to point B. If there's not a financial or other operational incentive to do certain things, then oftentimes developers will move on. They won't really take that. They won't take that step towards sustainability. Again, and my second point, sustainability is best realized when developers have the freedom to dream. Now, I have lived in a lot of different places, and every place has their own codes and zoning rules and their ideas about what a good development looks like. And Tucson is no different, right? One of the things we have that happens here in the city of Tucson, and from my experience, an individual or a business will buy a building, and then they find out the hard way sometimes that they need to go through the neighborhood planning process. And the neighborhood has a say in how buildings are built. and how things are built in their community. And that's a great way to engage the community. I think that's really important. But what sometimes it does is it saps out the developer's ability to dream about their project. At the end of the day, and I say this knowing that I am kind of speaking out of pocket here, because I'm, it's Tucson, and I understand that there are ways that things are done in Tucson that are very different than the ways things are done in Chicago and Atlanta and every place else. Developers are, I've always said the developers are the ones that are bringing the money and taking the risk and really doing, doing these projects. There definitely needs to be community engagement, but at some level we have to allow developers to dream about these big, beautiful projects that we want them to build. And then in that context, we work with them to make them sustainable, and we make them what we want them to be. So I know the city of Tucson is doing the Million Trees initiatives, which I think is brilliant, and is going to be a great way to incorporate some plant life into the environment that I know helps with, as I understand it, helps with lowering temperatures, helps with creating more livable environments. I even understand that more green trees and plants helps to improve people's moods and it does positives for depression, things like that. So that's a brilliant thing that we're doing. But it's also, so as we want to do that, we want to encourage developers to really embrace that idea and find ways to allow them to still dream while saying, hey, you know what, why don't you in your dream figure out where we can put these 2,000 trees. If you're going to do a giant development, let's figure out where these trees can go, or where some of these, these systems, where the rainwater retention can go. And these are some of these terms I'm not as familiar with because I'm still learning some of them. So no, we want to give developers that freedom to dream, because they will come up with really amazing things related to sustainability. I mean, even myself, and we're going to talk about some of the future projects that the tribe is planning. I would love to see us create a LEED Platinum building, fully self-sustaining, net zero, all of that, zero carbon footprint. It's possible. And I want it, and in my dreams, I see it, but I just got to get it to reality. So that the vision of sustainability, it can be had if developers really do have that freedom to visualize it. So I'm going to say this, and again, as a native Midwesterner, certain things are not foreign to me that I learned, not necessarily are foreign, but they are less welcome in other places. I learned as an employee of the city of Tucson that height was not the kind of thing that we just go bragging about, because it is not really in line with what I think a lot of people come to Tucson for. Right, you move to Tucson to take in the beauty that is here, the natural beauty that is here. You come to Tucson to take in the view of the mountains and the view of the desert, and it's very tranquil and very peaceful and very serene, and I can appreciate that. However, I do want to say this: building density and building height are one of the key ways that a development can improve the overall sustainability of a community. And the reason is this. If you think about Chicago, you've got any new building that goes in downtown is at a minimum 50 stories, right? And that seems like a lot. It's huge. Here, it would be the tallest building by 30 stories almost, 20 stories. But what happens in those buildings, you can put 1,000 units in one place, in one footprint. So instead of here, what we have, and I'm wholeheartedly planning on buying one of these houses one day. You go out in Vail and you go out to some of these communities, and they're sprawling communities, hundreds of acres wide. They've got 250 houses, but they take up 80 acres. They take up this immense amount of space that you then have to provide water to, and you have to provide power to, and all of the things that go with single family living. Now, again, I'm not saying that that's bad. Again, I want to live in a single family home. I completely appreciate that. The difference is when you take those same number of units and put them on a footprint that's 1 block wide, and then all of your utilities are in the exact same stack all the way up the building, all of a sudden you don't need as much water. All of a sudden you don't need as much electricity. You don't need as much to run these communities, to sustain and continue to operate these communities. So the overall environmental impact is, to a certain degree, less. Now, I completely appreciate that when you're building a 50-story building, it takes a ton of materials to build something like that. So there are trade-offs there. But what I would encourage as a community is that we don't automatically say no to density, and we don't automatically say no to taller buildings. Because as we were finding, cities and urban areas are growing at this massive rate. And while Tucson is one of the larger cities in the United States as far as space is concerned, and there's still a lot of empty area, Pima County has tons of empty space that can be developed, the environmental impact of that is very high. It takes up a lot of land. It takes up a lot of natural habitat for animals. It takes up just a lot of these things that people come here kind of to experience. You come here to experience that natural beauty, and yet at the same time, in the process of building out to accommodate the people who have come to experience it, we are also kind of destroying it at the same time. So while again, I am not necessarily, I kind of am, but I'm not really an advocate for height. I am saying that we really should take a different look at how we structure the future of the city. I think even when you drive through, so one of the things that I just kind of marveled at when I first moved to Tucson was when I would drive, so I live on the east side, and I would drive all the way down Speedway to go to work at the city. And when I go now to the tribe, I still take Speedway and then I get on the highway. There are so many interior to the city lots of land that aren't developed. So even on Speedway, which I think is probably considered one of the main streets in town, there are still areas where you can drive and find an empty lot or find abandoned buildings or find spaces that really could be utilized differently. And I think one of the key things that we can do to, one, accommodate the people that are going to continue to move here, because it is a great place and people want to be in all the sunshine, the pools, everybody wants that. So the people aren't going to stop coming. To accommodate that continued influx of people, I think we need to better utilize the infill resources that exist within the city and then allow for density and height in places where it's not as obstructive and it's not as out of place. You know, when you go past the U of A, they have, and I personally have some really nice apartment buildings for the students down there, but they're taller and contextually they make sense. And so as you look in that area, it might make sense. And again, I'm no city planner, but in my head, it might make sense for us to incorporate more buildings that go up, that go vertical, to help to preserve a lot of the beautiful natural habitat that's around us. Okay, so I know y'all came to hear about the project, right? So let's talk project. As I mentioned earlier, the project is titled Pohco'oria Kari'm. And what that means is Our Desert Homes. The project and its title are very much related to what the Pascua Yaqui Tribe is really about. So the reservation, for those who might not be aware, is on the southwest side of town, past the airport and kind of between the airport and the casino. Obviously, it's the tribe's casino. The overall reservation, honestly, I'm not entirely sure how big the overall reservation is, but this particular project sits on a 40-acre plot of land on the reservation. And this is just the first of what we hope to be 3 phases, where we have an entire, basically master plan community. This is a first for pretty much Indian country anywhere. This is a first, where we are basically taking the subdivision approach to providing housing for tribal members. I know in Arizona, with the exception, I think, of one other project, this is kind of cutting edge simply because of the way we're going about it. We did not plan out one street, or we're not just building houses. We planned every aspect of this community. And we're now just working through the pieces of getting it funded and getting it built. As mentioned before, just this phase is one of the largest tax credit projects on tribal land ever done in the state of Arizona. The total project will have at least 100 homes. Now, we're trying to increase that number by including townhomes into the development, but there will be a minimum of 100 new homes developed right on the reservation. There'll be an office building. If you look at this picture, obviously there's a very tall building back there. We are proposing an office complex and a retail space. And one of the things that I think we're doing here, and I don't know that it's not really common in Tucson that I'm aware of, is what we call a live, work, play community, where all of the resources in the community, all the things that people need to sustain themselves in the community are all in one place. Bigger, you know, I imagine LA, Phoenix, Chicago, Atlanta, Miami, all have these communities where there are offices somewhere in the building, there's a hotel in the building, there are stores on the first floor. A condo I lived in Chicago had my cleaners, my grocery store was on the first floor of the building. The condos, and there were some offices on like the second and third floor, and then all the condos were above that. So on any given day, if I needed anything, all I had to do was take an elevator trip downstairs. I drove a car. So I bought my car. I was very proud of my car. I had this had this red Jaguar. I was super proud of my. It was used. Don't get me wrong. I don't have money like that. So it was a used red Jaguar. I was very proud of my car. Drove it to Chicago. Parked it in the parking garage at the condo. It didn't move again for almost a month, because in Chicago, the way that my life was structured, everything was in that building. When I wanted food, I took the elevator downstairs. When I wanted to, hang out with people, there were community rooms in the building. You walked more places than you drove. It wasn't because I couldn't drive. It wasn't because, there weren't, there's parking garages and all that, but the city of Chicago is structured such that it's so much easier to avoid using your car at all. It's actually harder to drive a car. New York is the same way. It's harder to have and drive a car than it is to just go outside and walk, or go outside and take the bus. So we talk about ways to incorporate sustainability. When we talk about master plan developments, if we start to build them in ways where people can live in that fashion, all of a sudden you don't really have to drive. You don't really have to get in the car. And I know Tucson, it was, as it was explained to me, was kind of built as a driver city, right? You had to drive from place to place. City's huge. It's 30 minutes gets you halfway from one side of town to the other. So you have to have a car, you have to drive. But if we could find ways to build communities where people don't have to do that, where walking is actually better for you time-wise than driving, then all of a sudden you reduce that dependency on automobiles and you increase a lot of things. Your health goes up because now you're walking. Your pollution goes down because you're not driving as much. There's just so many positives to doing communities this way. So we really do hope to create this environment. One of the bigger health issues within the tribe and on the reservation is diabetes, and some of that comes from poor eating habits, but also from a lack of exercise. And communities where you can walk from point A to point B, and that's easier than getting in a car, we will encourage people to take even the smallest amount of exercise. Has huge impacts for their health, and we hopefully can also, kind of as a indirect benefit of something like this, we can encourage people to be healthier, but also be more environmentally sound. One of the other things that is really unique about this project, and this isn't done anywhere nationally, we are converting all of these units to home ownership at the end of what's called the compliance period. So when you get tax credits from the state of Arizona, there's a time frame where the units are under what's called compliance, the compliance period. You have to follow certain rules and requirements and meet all these criteria. But at the end of that 15-year time frame, you can do whatever you want with the units. You effectively own them free and clear. It's like your mortgage is paid off. Most developers, most housing authorities, when they do these projects, the end of year 15, they simply line everything up and do another project. So I've seen projects reach year 15, and by year 17, they're tearing it all down and building something new. And when you really think about that, it's kind of ridiculous. At 15 years old, the house is barely aged. It's not even, in house years, it's not even a teenager. And yet we're already going to tear it down and build something new. And the reason we do this is because the financial incentives have gone away. Housing authorities don't necessarily have the money to maintain some of these projects. So instead of spending the hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars that it would take to maintain and operate these as continued rentals, it's easier to tear them down, bring in new investors, and do another project. So you will find projects that between year 15 and year 20, and honestly, a 15-year-old house, if somebody sold me a house that was built in 2005, I would not find that to be an old house. I would think to myself, wow, this house is fairly new. My parents' house was built in the 50s. So imagine you just saw a row of houses that were built in 2005. And because they were built in 2005, and it turns 2021, they're no use to us. We're going to tear them all down. All that material wasted, all of that effort, all of that environmental impact taken away, right? So that we can then turn around and build something new, which doubles on the environmental impact, right? Our approach is different. We're going to convert these units to home ownership. We're going to basically, for very, very minimal, and we may actually even just hand them over to some families, but for a very minimal amount, we're going to sell these units to the families. And by minimal, I mean, it'll probably be income-based, but it could be as little as $1,000 to as much as $25,000. But just something to get the houses in the hands of these families, and these become permanent homes. Our goal is to build community. One of the strongest, best ways to build community is to have homeowners in your community. And there's nothing against renters. I'm a renter right now. I like to believe I'm a decent neighbor. My neighbors, don't ask them because they might complain that I barbecue all the time. But the idea of creating community is really built on home ownership. I own a home in Illinois, and to this day, my neighbors who lived around us in that neighborhood can call me if the renters in my house had caused them any problems. And I've told my renters up front, we this is a great community, and I care about this community. So I can't let you do anything that's going to be detrimental to the community. So my renters know, but I am connected to that community. I have a connection with that community. Home ownership does that. I don't know what about it gives you that connection, but there's something about owning a piece of land and owning the house that sits on it that makes you care about everything that goes on around it. I care that my neighbors' houses are doing well because it impacts my house, and vice versa. So we all look out for each other. Same thing goes for here. We want to create community. We want to truly create a thriving, sustainable community. And so part of that is part of that is helping to create homeowners. And that's what we're going to be doing at the end of 15 years. So just so you can see, and for those of you who weren't able to see the newspaper article that ran, these are two of the homes that styles we're going to build. This is the one on the right is our 2-bedroom, the one on the left is our 4-bedroom home style. I will say, and I've had a few people ask, why in the world would we build, and I don't know why people call them mansions. They're not mansions. People have gotten the impression, I think maybe just because of the pictures, that these are giant houses. They're really not. I think the 2-bedroom is around 12 or 1,300 square feet. The 4-bedroom is somewhere between 1,600 and 1,800 square feet. They're not huge by any means. They are very well designed, I think. You know, it's impressive what you can do, some of the newer architectural teachings and things that architects are able to do today. The layouts, I think, are beautiful. But what we wanted to do, and one of the key things about this project, was we wanted to turn heads. And we wanted people to drive down the street when they see these and say, whoa, what is that? You know, we want people to have that immediate impact. The first impression that, you know, if you're driving through our community and if you don't live on a reservation, I want you to say, wow, they're living like that over here. They really have modern houses. Because one of the things that's interesting about the history of the tribe that I found is that, and I don't want to say it's a negative, because again, you know, there's a lot of history, and I don't even think that I'm the right person to speak about it, because I am not a tribal citizen. There's just this massive history that goes into, you know, being indigenous and how things kind of played out and how they ended up on the reservation. But one of the things that I've noticed both here and when I spent time in Alaska was that tribal members and their housing programs were always the least and always the lesser of. It was never the most, and it was never the best of. And one of the key things, and we had to explain this to our architects a couple of times, was we don't want to do a project that is just a project. We don't want to build houses that are just houses. If you drive through the reservation, as in a lot of neighborhoods in Tucson, not just on the reservation, a lot of the houses are kind of boxy, right? There's just 4 walls, flat roof, the bedrooms are inside, you got a carport. The first plan that our architect brought to us was similar to that. It was new, but it was the same thing. And we went back to him and said, no, we need to change the ways people see affordable housing. Not just for the reservation, not just for the tribe, but affordable housing in general. The projects can be beautiful if we make them beautiful, if we insist that they be beautiful. And to me, one of the best things about owning a home is having pride in that home. And it's not very hard to have pride in a house that you think is beautiful. It becomes difficult when your house looks like everybody else's house. I want people who live in these homes to be proud of them, to take care of them. We've tried to find ways, I hope that people feel this way when they see these homes, that they are stunning. Now, the pictures don't show, we actually have there's a lot more landscaping. Obviously, these are renderings, but we're doing a whole bunch of landscaping. We're doing all the really cool things that I think make a house beautiful, and hopefully people will agree. I feel that some people have agreed, because we are actually up for an award for creativity for the project, so hopefully we'll win. If we do, I'll run around town holding my prize. I don't know. I'll figure out what to do. But so these are the designs, and this is similar to what we're going to be doing in the rest of the complex and the rest of the subdivision, where they won't all look like this, because I don't believe that any neighborhood, all the houses should look the same, but we're going to push the envelope. There's going to be modern houses all throughout this subdivision. I really want to change the way people look at housing in general and say, you know what, and I've seen other developers in town who are doing this kind of thing. And, you know, we've had a lot of people call us and say they just want to be a part of it. We've had builders who want to say they built it. And that's really new for us as a tribe, to have these people so excited to come work with us. So, we're excited to have, these renderings, and this isn't just a drawing. These are the actual 3D modeling of the architectural plan. So this is what's getting built. This is with very little difference. The materials obviously look different in the light, but this is what we're going to build, and we're hopeful that it is truly as eye-catching and as stunning as we think it is. All right. So let's talk the features, right? The fun stuff. So, and this is a term I just learned, by the way. I just learned this term when I moved to Tucson. I had never heard of it until I came here. So xeriscaping, which is using mostly native plants and using landscaping that does not require water or requires very, very minimal water. So the way we're going to do this is all of our landscaping is all desert plants. I've seen developments where you bring it. I actually went to see a development elsewhere in town where the guy who built the building had laid turf all over the project, which I get, and I totally understand, but it looked weird to me because there is no grass in Tucson, which took some getting used to, by the way. But there, you don't want to bring in a bunch of plants that need watering all the time. You don't want to lay grass everywhere that needs, because it's wasteful. You're going to spray a bunch of water. I mean, the amount of water we would have to spray to put grass in all these houses would be immense. And while I like grass and I think it will look beautiful, I've learned through my times here that desert landscapes have beauty of their own. And I think we need to accept that, and we need to stop trying to create something that isn't already here. There's already beauty here, and we need to use that. So the xeriscaping that we're going to do, we're actually we're going to have cacti, I always get this wrong, cacti, on the site. So we're going to have large desert rocks. We're going to use all the plants that are native to the desert are going to be the plants that we use to landscape this project. So there's not going to be metal fences at these houses, but the houses will have lined yards, but they'll be lined by bushes and rocks and things that naturally occur in the environment. So that's kind of a big deal. They will require next to no water. The water that falls from the sky should be all the water that they need. And ideally, that's the way that this should work, right? We don't want to have to reuse or use additional resources to run these projects, especially not for things that aren't truly necessary. You don't have to have landscaping, but it is beautiful. You want to have landscaping. So in order to incorporate it, we want to find an environmentally friendly way to do that. The projects are going to be solar capable. So let me tell you what that means. Actually, I understood it when I said it the first time to somebody, but everybody looking like, well, what does that mean? Are all houses solar capable? And the answer to that question is yes and no. To power a home with solar, you actually have to have your entire electrical system in your house has to meet certain requirements. You can't just plug it in and run solar. Not the kind of solar that's going to run your whole house. So we have intentionally designed, we're going to have very, very, very modern electrical systems in these homes. And it does two things. One, it prepares us for solar. We also are going to structure the roof so that they can hold some of the more heavy duty solar panels that collect, as I understand it, collect higher percentages of sunlight. But one, having a high quality electrical system in your home does a lot to reduce your energy output. I didn't realize how much energy is actually lost in the just operation of a home. Just having electricity run through your house causes electrical loss. This way we don't have to experience that as much. So we'll have that, but we'll also be prepared for two things. All the houses will have top-notch electrical system, but they also have a space within the in the storage area, in the mechanical room, as we call it, for the Tesla solar batteries, not solar batteries, the batteries storage system. So while we're not sure if we're going to be able to put those in, we are at least trying to figure out how to get the battery powered storage systems in these units. What that does is, to the extent that maybe your solar power isn't set up or your solar isn't able to run the entire house, the Tesla system draws energy into the battery at low peak hours. So your off peak hours. So it actually costs less for the resident to draw energy into their home. And then the battery disperses the energy throughout the house at times of high peak energy. So your bill goes down, your usage goes down, you're drawing any energy at off peak time. So it actually helps to reduce the strain on the electrical grid citywide. But also it also helps to reduce the bill for our renters, which again is a very important thing. These are affordable units. We definitely have to be mindful of how much money people have to operate these. Renewable materials, to the extent that we can find recyclable or recycled materials. We want to use those in these projects. We've already had that discussion with our design team. So, for example, I know that you can use recycled drywall. You can use certain recycled natural resources for countertops, or reclaimed wood for your counters. So all of those things, to the extent that we're able to incorporate those into the project, that's going to be a key for us, is trying to pull all of that in. One of the big things out here, and living in Alaska, living in Chicago, places where the weather is extreme for other reasons, insulation is huge. And a lot of homes on the reservation, I'm not really sure why this is, but they either don't have any insulation or they have very minimal insulation. And what that does is, even if you can cool your house to 60 degrees, it'll be 80 degrees in an hour because all of your cold air is going back out. Or in the wintertime, not hearing so much, but in Chicago, all of your warm air is going out. We're going to use the highest rated possible insulation so that once a house gets cold, it stays cold. And so in the summertime, you're not running the AC unit all day long because your house keeps that cool. As long as you keep the doors and the windows closed, it stays cool in your home longer. So we really want to bring in those really, we're building, the homes are built very tight as it is. We also want to use very high quality insulation to help with that. And again, as another feature, we talk about the master plan community and really thinking the project through from beginning to end. And we really started at the end. So when we designed the project, we started at the end. We said, what is the end goal? What are we building? What is the whole thing about? And then we worked backwards from that. Once we decided we wanted to create this live, work, play community, then we worked backwards. And what does that mean? What kinds of communities, what kinds of subdivisions need to exist inside of that? What kind of housing, what kind of office building, what kind of retail resources? So we've planned it all kind of backwards to the point where we are now. We're actually taking the first step to developing the project. So we talk about that current project, but then we also like this kind of future of the project, right? So we talk about the live, work, play environment. My dream, and I will tell you this, and it's kind of a developer thing. Maybe I'm a little. It's kind of my statue to myself. They're not going to let me build a statue, and I already know that. So we are the office building that we are planning, and it's not just an office. It's supposedly going to be, our plan is to have multi-floor retail, a senior elder apartment building, a couple stories there, some traditional, potentially condos, and then offices. But I found out that the tallest building in Tucson, the One South Church building, I think it's called a church building, is 330 feet tall, roughly, somewhere in that area. It's 23 stories. I told the design team, if we can afford it, I want 335 feet. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I mean, if we're gonna do it, right? I mean, you might as well, right? So our goal, though it's very impractical, but our goal is to really make a statement and build this this project in a way that is really the first step of many. The reservation, there's still a lot of undeveloped land on the reservation. And one of the interesting, and it's kind of weird that I'm going to bring it up today, one of the interesting conversations I had with a councilman was I take my son to see all the Marvel movies, all of them. We've since he was younger than he is now. He's still a kid to me, but so we gone to see them all. One of the ones that we liked the most, for obvious reasons, I think it was just a really good movie, was Black Panther. In that movie, one of the most interesting things about it was the creation, the way that the movie development team created, the production team created the country of Wakanda, right? It's this futuristic place, it's got all these buildings, but it's all culturally appropriate for where it is in Africa and all that. But it was interesting because I was having this conversation with the council member, and they said, I love that movie because it presents an image that I would love to see on the reservation, where we have, we have our community. We already have the space. We just need to develop this thoughtful, forward-thinking approach to everything that we do. So to me, and maybe I heard something different than what was said, but I heard, Keith, you're going to do a project here one day, and when you do it, it needs to be at the cutting edge of everything. So that's what we're trying to do. With building up, there are 22,000 registered tribal members. The only way we're ever going to fit them all on a reservation, not that that's a goal, but the only way we'll ever be able to fit more people on a reservation is to, as I mentioned earlier, is to build up. And I think building up in a thoughtful way can allow the tribe to have this identity all to itself. If they want buildings, and we've toyed with some ideas of buildings that are really, they look like mountains. They have these kind of jagged angles and they're shaped really cool. and they kind of resemble the mountain landscape, the coloring, the materials used. So we really want to push the envelope and do that in these future phases of this project to kind of set that standard. They're going to be parks and green space. And I know earlier I just said we're going to do xeriscaping, so we're not going to have grass. And then I say now we're going to have parks and green space. The parks that we are planning are, they use a recycled, it's like a mixture of like recycled tires. So it's like a rubber kind of material. And basically it's safer for kids. So there's going to be, you know, like a playground and everything, but the park area is designed to really be safe for kids. So that if they fall off a swing or something, they're not going to get all scraped up. To me, when I was a kid, I guess nobody cared about us because there was just dirt and rocks and stuff, and you go jump flying off the swings and land on your knee, your knee's all bloody and there's no skin on it. That was kind of how it was back in the day, right? Now we treat kids differently and they get all spongy landing spots. And, you know, I want to tell, like, I don't want to tell my kids toughen up, but apparently that's not what we do anymore. So we're going to incorporate some playground areas that have this recycled material. But again, it kind of goes back to our pitch for sustainability in that, you know, we want to utilize these renewable resources. So tires get thrown away all the time. And we found that if you shred them up and then use them in your grounds, all of a sudden you have this great playground for kids. And then for our green space, we're going to use turf. So I made fun of that gentleman earlier, but we're going to do the same thing. We're going to use turf to kind of create that green space. A cultural space needs to be included, and that's, you know, obviously as part of the Pascua Yaqui Tribe, it's very important for the culture to continue. And we want to continue to grow that presence. One, for the continuation of their culture, but also one of the things I've loved about the tribe, and, you know, kind of evident in my being there, is that they really are open to anyone who wants to learn more or be a part of their community. So I have been so fortunate. They've welcomed me in. I'm by no means tribal, with open arms, and they've been willing to show me and share their culture with me. And so having these spaces where people can come in and engage directly with the culture, it actually does a lot to break down barriers. One of the things that they did very well in Alaska, the Tlingit Haida region, Haida tribes in Alaska are very much a part of the community, and the tourist events that happen in Juneau are very much driven kind of by that cultural history. Because at one point in time, all of the land that Juneau sits on was Tlingit land. So there's this whole history that when you come in on a cruise, you get to really experience when you go through. And I think that's something that the Pascua Yaqui Tribe is also interested in doing, is really creating this cultural center where people can experience the history and experience kind of the background of the tribe. Because the more that you know, I think the more that you can find compassion in it, and the more that you can kind of relate to people as human beings once you understand what they've been through. So we want to build in some very unique cultural spaces, and it goes to the next thing, a cultural marketplace. So the cultural marketplace idea came not to me really, it was something that was going through my office when I got started, and there's a drawing in the cabinet somewhere of a cultural museum and kind of an open air marketplace, which traditionally is something that the Yaqui people have done. I thought it would be really cool to try and figure out how to incorporate that kind of retail environment into the buildings as we build them. So having retail space is important, but we want to have it in a way that is historically appropriate for where the buildings are. If we were building this in Guadalupe or in Phoenix or something, it might be a different approach. But since we're on the reservation, we thought it would be a really cool idea to create this, maybe probably an indoor, but this kind of open marketplace that is kind of culturally relevant for the tribe. So we're working on that too. It's just really about designing this space that, one, drives the conversation about what we're going to do in the future, but then two, also just kind of really incorporates all of the tribe's history and all the things that the tribe needs into its space. So on the next slide, I'll show you just some pictures, some renderings of some things that we're kind of hoping to do, kind of different angles of the office building, some of the other houses. The middle one on the left there shows a row on the right, the white townhouses that we're hoping to develop. And we hope to have kind of one of those cool brick entryways. And just, you can see the park space, you just kind of see how all of the project hopefully comes together. And again, these are kind of we asked somebody to draw us up some renderings, so they did. So these aren't necessarily plans that are set in stone, but we are hoping to really really do something cool. And that's kind of the goal. So here, the question always comes up as to why. Why develop this? Why are we doing this? What's the point, right? Everything has to have a reason. Everything has to have a why. The first thing you should understand is the Pascua Yaqui Tribe, we have a waiting list, just like everybody. The city of Tucson has a waiting list. We have a waiting list. Everybody has a waiting list. It's kind of, when you think about it, it's amazing that we don't put more money into affordable housing when every single place that provides it has a waiting list. I don't think there's any place else in America where everybody has a waiting list, but nobody gets more money. The tribe has a waiting list of 1,200 families. And what that means is it's a little bit different than a city. So the city of Tucson's waiting list is roughly 18,000 families are on the waiting list. The average household on that waiting list has about 3 people in it. So 18 times 3, I'm not great at math, but we're talking about 50-ish thousand people on the city of Tucson's waiting list, right? Pascua Yaqui Tribe, if you think about this in orders of magnitude, the Pascua Yaqui Tribe's waiting list is 1,200 families, but on average, the average Yaqui family has about 6 people in it. So when you do the math, we have almost 10,000 people waiting on housing. The city of Tucson's waiting list is really long. Ours, you can wait. If somebody gets on a waiting list today, and it's really unfortunate because I really hate having to explain this to people, you can get on a waiting list today. The earliest that you can hope to get housing through us is 8 years from now. You gotta think about that for a minute. You don't apply for public or affordable housing because you need housing in 8 years. You don't plan for this kind of thing. You apply for affordable housing because you needed it yesterday. And the earliest that we're able to help you in any realistic terms is 8 years from now. So one of the whys is that we have people who need housing. They needed it a week ago, and they need it, and we need to be able to provide it. So the more housing that we can build for them, the more people that we can help. A statistic from 2018, 24% of all Native Americans lived in poverty, which was the highest rate of any racial or ethnic group in the United States. So when you think about that, it also then goes back to the number of people on a waiting list, right? You've got a large group of people who are living in poverty already. They're living in overcrowded housing situations. And yet we have a waiting list that's almost a decade long. And with that many people, a quarter or of all people in your ethnic group being in poverty means that there's really not a lot of opportunity for people to move out of that. You need some stability in order to start to gather your bearings, to save money, to get your own house, or to get a rental apartment, or to get a job, or to send your kids through school. One of the things I always think about is with my son, he just has to be a kid. He doesn't have to do anything else. He doesn't have to, when I tell him all the time, you have only one job, and that's to go to school and get good grades. That's the only job he has. And the rest of the time, he just gets to be a kid. He doesn't have to think about where he's sleeping tonight. He doesn't have to worry about whether he's going to have food tonight. He ate all the food in the fridge today, as a matter of fact. So, but he doesn't have those worries. When I was a kid, my parents worked, I didn't have those worries. Our house was our house. I knew that every day I got to go home. I didn't think about it. When you live in poverty as a kid, that's not always the way your life goes. You don't get to sit back and say, well, I'm going home, and that home is always going to be the same home, and it's always going to be there. Or that the refrigerator is always going to have food. It may not. And it takes away the opportunity for kids to be kids. And studies have shown, and I believe this as well, when you take that away from kids and you put them in a constant state of uncertainty, it almost creates a PTSD for them, in that they go through their life expecting uncertainty and almost thriving in uncertainty. And because of that, it hampers their ability to become truly productive members of society. So you look at some of the things that exist in certain communities and you wonder why they are. Part of the challenge is that these are people who are now adults who grew up in these situations where there was never any stability. And when you take that away from kids, it creates instability in their life almost forever. So that's another reason why we do this. I just mentioned, tribal members are far more likely than other racial or ethnic groups to be in overcrowded housing. Reason is cultural, actually. They don't, as a group, for me, and I love my mom, but she's probably going to live in a home one day, right? I love her, but that's just, I don't have room for something. I don't know, I'm a terrible son. But the reality is, in their culture, that's not acceptable under any circumstances whatsoever. Your grandmother gets sick, can't take care of herself, she moves in with you. Or you live with her, and the house, you just kind of roll the house to the next generation of people. So you will find 2 and sometimes 3 generations of indigenous people in one house. And what that creates sometimes is just a lot of people in one house. And we had a family that we had to help in the Guadalupe area. And they had an issue with their air conditioning wasn't working. Their electrical panel was kind of messed up. So we, as one of the things, as a tribe, one of the things we would do is we'll do those repairs for people to help them when they can't afford them. So I send my crew up there and I say, listen, give me a count of people so we can get them in a hotel while we do this work. The work's going to take like 2 or 3 days. The total count of people in a 3-bedroom home was there were 11 people who officially lived there. The total number of people who regularly resided there was 23. It was unbelievable. But again, culturally, it was unacceptable for them to allow any of their family members to not have a place to sleep. Didn't matter how crowded it was. And there's a certain, I respect that, because they don't ever let family go without. If somebody has it, everybody has it. But at the same time, when you combine that with the poverty, and you combine that with these sometimes less than standard housing conditions, it just compounds on the problems that people are experiencing. ADOH, the Arizona Department of Housing, have a set aside specifically for tribal entities. And one of the things that I know, just because I'm a developer and I've been a developer in other areas, set-asides are the things that all developers pick away at because they don't like them, right? Because when you have a set-aside, it's money that exists that everybody can't reach. This year, we were doing some research and we found that there really weren't any major projects planned in our set-aside, which means if we didn't use it, ADOH is going to look back at the previous year and they're going to say, well, we have X dollars and I've got all these developers that are asking for this money. And the tribes, we set some money aside for them and they didn't use it. So let's give it away because they're not using the money. So let's put it back in the pool and make a couple other developers happy. We find, we lobby for that all the time, but I think the best lobbying that we can do is to do these kinds of projects so that, one, ADOH sees that there's a need, that we're doing something with the money that they're setting aside, but then 2, we're not just wasting it. We're going to do impactful, award-winning big projects that people love to see and love to look at. So that was another why for this project, is we couldn't afford to let that resource go unused. And frankly, it was free money, so why not, right? But now you have to ask, really, why though? Because those are standard answers. Those are the answers that anybody could look up at any point in time. But here's the really why. Tribal members historically, and I mentioned this earlier, receive the least of everything. And I thought it was time that we change that. Let's not do the least, let's do the best. Let's not give people just something, let's give them everything. Let's build something that people can be proud of, but also something they've never thought that they could have on their own. Let's build something that makes them so proud of what they do that they tell other people how proud they are. And then other people see what we've done and say, wow, I really wish that I could live there. So it's about giving tribal members who, and I'm not, I'm again, not super versed on the history, but anywhere, whether it's Tucson, whether it's Chicago, whether it's Florida, indigenous people were the first people here. And it's kind of messed up, really, that when we look at our communities today, oftentimes that group of people is the group of people that receives the least from us. So to me, having the opportunity, if we're going to do something, let's do the best, the very best quality we can. The second thing, and I believe this, being creative encourages more creativity. I don't expect that I'll always be the director. I'd love to be, but the nature of my career, as you saw, I move around a lot. So, but I want to do a thing that encourages other people to say, wait a minute, the housing department did this really cool project, this whole subdivision, we've never seen it before, it's super modern, it's super awesome, we want to do more of that. But then it encourages people to say, well, now my project next door can't suck because Keith is out here showing off and he's building these really cool things and everybody's got garages and they're parking their cars and the yards look amazing. My project can't suck. My project has to be as nice as that. So it's about encouraging people to be more creative. And one of the things I really, really, really want to do is encourage kids to be more creative. And I'll come back to the kids thing over and over again, because to me, when kids can see that their tribe built this, then all of a sudden that they believe that they're good enough to do these things and they're talented enough to be in these places. So maybe we can encourage somebody to be interested in architecture or encourage someone to be interested in construction or development because they get to see us build this really awesome community right in front of them. This is not a community they're going to read about someplace or see on TV, or it's not TV, on social media, wherever kids see stuff now. But this isn't something they're just going to see. This is something they're going to experience. They're going to know people that live in these houses. Their friends are going to come visit them in these houses. They're going to know that this is possible for them. And I think that's really, really key. Setting a standard for tribal housing. And this is nationwide. I want this project and all the projects that we do to change the way people develop housing, because it can be changed. It doesn't have to be the cheapest housing there is. It doesn't have to be we're going to cut corners at every place that we can. No, it can be beautiful. It can be well built. It can be environmentally friendly. It can be sustainable. All you have to do is want to do it and be willing to sit down and make the numbers work. It can be done. And it's about setting that standard. I want everybody who's doing the development from here on out to say, well, who did that project in Tucson? That project is awesome. And I want my project in Florida or Delaware or Maine or California. I want my project to look like that. I want people in California, because there's nothing against California, because I'm a Chicagoan. So I moved here and thought I knew everything. People from Chicago or from California move here and they think they know everything too. I want them to look at that project like, holy cow, how was that possible? I thought we only had this in California or in wherever. No, we're doing it right here. It can be done better here than it can be done anywhere, because there are amazing people here and amazing organizations that are putting their best foot forward and really mixing it up and doing new things. So it's really about setting that new standard. We talked earlier, so I won't labor this point, but creating homeowners creates community. And I think we all, for those of us who are homeowners or who have been homeowners, know that, right? There's just this connection between home ownership and the building of a community. And I'm gonna say this last one. It's true. This is one of those things. It's putting the country on notice. And when I say that, and I've had a few people because I've said it a couple other times to other people, and they've looked at me like, well, what in the hell do you mean putting it? You can't say that. No, we are putting the entire country on notice that if you want to be the best, you're gonna have to be better than us. And I'm not planning on making that easy for anybody. If you want to say that your project is the best project in the country, well, you better drive out to Tucson and you better come see mine and make sure that you actually have a claim to the best project in the country. That's who we're trying to be. We are trying to be the project, the developers, the tribe, the organization, that no matter what you're talking about, whether it's tribal housing, non-tribal housing, luxury, affordable, you want to talk about the best, you need to bring it behind our head to Tucson and see what's really happening. Because I truly believe that it's not about, because everybody gets caught up on what's happening in New York or what's all on the beach in Miami. And don't get me wrong, I like to go on, see what's on the beach in Miami too. But I want people to know that if you really, really want to see what's going on, you really want to know what's cutting edge, that you're going to have to make this trip out here, because we're doing things in an environment that is more challenging than a lot of people have to work in. We're doing it in a way that is environmentally friendly, that's sustainable, that's repeatable, that's scalable. And we're going to take this, we have plans to develop all throughout the region. It's not just on the reservation. We're looking at ways to develop in Marana and Old Pascua in town. We're looking at Guadalupe and Tempe and even areas around Fresno. And interestingly enough, I don't know how much you all know about the Pascua Yaqui Tribe, but they originated in Mexico long before Arizona was a state or Tucson was a city. The Yaqui people that were from Mexico through this whole entire region. So there's an area in Mexico called Rio Yaqui that is kind of the cultural beginnings of the Yaqui tribe. And we're even trying to figure out ways that we can work with the Mexican government to find ways to develop housing and develop resources in Mexico. So again, we want everybody to know that if you want to say you're the best, you can say it. But I want you to come out here and make sure you got the claim. Don't claim it if you don't own it. All right, so back to the beginning. So hopefully you understand a little bit more when we say bigger, better, bolder, what we mean, right? We truly want to be at top. We want to be at the cutting edge. We want to be whom everybody comes and says, wow, they're really doing amazing things right there at the Yaqui Tribe. So now that you all know, our secret model is not secret at all. Like everybody knows that, I heard this is going to be on YouTube, it's recorded. So it's going to be out there, and I'm okay with that, because I really do believe that that this is what we need to be as an organization. So that's the presentation. Oh God, forgot. One more thing. I told you there was a rhino, and there is a rhino, I promise. So back to the city of Tucson. Back in my time, I was at the city of Tucson. My son is saying, "You come on, man. You're good." My son is behind me. He's like coming out of his room. So back to my time at the city of Tucson. On on that zoo tour, the most amazing experience, right? So you go and they show you all the cool animals, and there are tons. I'm a big fan. They have an alligator, and I've always loved alligators. So I wanted to take the alligator home, but apparently that is not a good idea. They tell me that they bite, and apparently their bite is not gentle. So they wouldn't let me take them home. But we go around and they show us all the different animals. But the last stop on the tour is on the backside of the rhino enclosure. And the rhino is so still. He's laying way across the field. He's just laying there. And he looks like a rock. Like I honestly didn't see him in the enclosure, just kind of laying outside in the dirt, he's covered in mud. And so the zookeeper sets out some food and he calls him over. And he has the coolest name. His name is Fireball, which I love. It's like the coolest name ever. And he like calls him like you would call a dog. And Fireball's head pops up, and I assume he's familiar with the zookeeper. And he comes running like full speed over to this rail that we're all standing at. And I'm I'm a little nervous because this is a giant, 1,500-pound rhinoceros. You can hear it, thundering, stomping on the ground, and it runs all the way up to the edge of the enclosure where we're standing and just stops and just walks very casually over and just stands around. He's eating his treats. And we get this really amazing story about the rhinos and how they're endangered and why, and just how important conservation is. But the best part of the experience, and I have told people this, I don't know, probably 100 times, was it's just you get to touch the rhino, right? So as part of this experience, the zoo says it's cool, just reach out, pet the rhino. And I was like, well, we get to actually. So you reach out, but you can't. So the rule is you can't tap him like you would tap like a dog. You need to be gentle. You can't be gentle. He's like, because he says, Fireball will think that you're a fly, and he will swat you with his tail if he thinks that, if you don't tap him hard enough. And he said the tail, that's just like a little bit of like fur at the end of the tail. He's like, it's not soft. It's like porcupine. It's really pointy and it's tough and it's not pleasant to get slapped by it. So you're like, I feel bad, but you're like, but I got to pet a rhino. When you tap him like the dirt, that he lays in the dirt to kind of keep him cool, but you tap him, the dirt falls. But it's just so cool. This experience to pet a rhino. But one of the more interesting things and one of the takeaways that I got from it, on top of the fact that I got to pet a rhino, which was this hand, by the way, is this one's my left hand. On top of that fact, though, I realized that part of the reason that rhinos like Fireball have to live in these enclosures, on top of obviously the poaching and all that horrible business there, is just a complete destruction of their wild natural habitat, right? And the fact that we're deforesting at these amazing rates and we're doing all these things, and we talk about sustainability in our project or in any project, and to me, one of the reasons why is so that people or animals like Fireball don't have to live in a zoo, so that the only place that my son can see a rhino isn't just a zoo. And maybe one day he can go on a safari in the wild and just see a rhino, because we've stopped tearing up the forest and we've stopped tearing up their natural habitat. So anything that we can do to decrease our need for materials, or we talk about the projects that they build them in 15 years, they tear them down, build them again. If we can stop doing that, anything that we can do to really allow for beautiful creatures like this to have their own natural places to live, I think is worth doing. And I know there are a million other reasons, and I'm not an expert in all the sustainability. I know there are a million super important reasons why we need to be more sustainable. It's hot as hell here every day. And, I understand that it wasn't always this hot. And that's alarming when you think about it, right? It's hotter every year. I jokingly asked the question, how did society ever take foot in Tucson because it's so hot? But the reality is it wasn't always this hot. And there will come a point if it keeps getting hotter where society can't stay. And we have to find ways to avoid it. And I think as a real estate development professional, it's key for us to take and do our part to create sustainable developments that decrease some of these negative impacts. So with that actually is the presentation. So I think I will stop sharing, and I think I'm back, and I will turn it back over to Karen. Thank you all. This has been wonderful.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you. It's really important to know that developers are paying attention. I mean, I think a lot of us in the Climate Tucson community are saying, well, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. You're going to do that or do this. But we have to remember that not everyone feels our understands what we are looking at from our perspective. So it's great to hear all this. It's really terrific. And there's some questions. I want to start off with a question I had just because I read it in one of the stories. Part of this is an effort to keep people to not keep people, but encourage people to live on the reservation, to establish more of a community within the reservation. Is that true?
That's very true. So, obviously we don't want to tell people where to live. And I think our goal is to create um, an area where we want the reservation to be a place where people desire to live. One of the things I've always ran into in my career in fair housing is you can't steer people one way or the other, but you want them to live in good communities. I chose my neighborhood because when I drove through and I looked at the available rentals, I wanted to be here because this neighborhood seemed nice. It was quiet. The housing met my needs. We want to do the same thing on a reservation. We want people to want to live there by choice. We want that to be the location of choice. So that's kind of, so yeah, to answer your question, yes, we are truly trying to create a place where everybody wants to be there.
Yeah, and a sense of pride in their community. Okay, so I have, let's see, um, where is it? There it is. From Chuck, how was the tribe's culture incorporated into the planning process and reflected in the design?
So interestingly enough, it's really not reflected in the design. I'll be lying to you if I told you that those designs really had a lot of cultural influence in them directly. And it goes back to kind of the how we were developing and kind of the statement we were trying to make. Though what we are doing is, so one of the things that happens in the culture, in the Yaqui culture is they have a lot of cultural ceremonies. Though COVID has kind of made those a little less frequent. Um, Normally they have a lot of cultural ceremonies. Something called Quaresma, which is basically Easter, is a huge, the Lent season is a big cultural event for the Yaqui people. And one of the parts of that is a celebration is that a lot of people, they build handmade sheds it's to be culturally done properly, it has to be built by hand. But it's a shed basically that goes on their property that holds a lot of cultural materials, whether it's crosses or some of the regalia that they wear. All these different things have to be placed in these sheds. Um, the lots have been designed to be large enough to allow for the house, but also to have room for the cultural sheds as well. So as much as, when you look at the design, you really wouldn't see that in the design, and that was intentional because of how the statements that we were trying to make development wise. But if you were to look at the lot sizes, they're sizable lots, and that is to allow for the incorporation of those cultural sheds and some of the other cultural activities that people participate in.
Um, Now, let's see. So I think you answered the question about why solar capable rather than solar installed. Chuck, is that right? Did you get an answer to that, or would you like? Oh, you can't talk.
The answer, I can say, the answer to the question actually was just financial. We actually designed out the plan. The whole project was designed solar installed. It was supposed to be 100% solar on every house. When you take tax credits, there are a lot of additional costs that you end up having. So if you do the math, we're spending over $300,000 a house in total. When you think about, the project is $20 million. There are 50 units. It's very expensive. Now, not all of that money is coming out of our pockets, but it's coming from somebody's pockets, right? That's because when you use tax credits, you have a lot of increased costs that really you wouldn't have if you were developing it in different ways. But we had to use that resource. So obviously you take those requirements along with it. So when we did the math, we couldn't afford to incorporate the solar in all of the units. It was somewhere near $15,000 per unit. And there was just really, the resources didn't exist. And one of the other things is your scoring is competitive. So when you apply for tax credits, it's a competitive process. There are other entities that you are competing with for the funds. Solar doesn't, for whatever reason, and I'm not sure why this is, and maybe this is the kind of thing that as community members, we should probably be lobbying ADOH to change. They don't give any points for adding solar to your units, which doesn't make any sense. Like as your comment mentions, a plethora. This is the only place I've ever lived where you could actually run a home purely on solar. So we really do need to change ADOH's mind on what they prioritize. Because their point system is based on their own priorities. I believe they just get that generally from the state legislature, but solar has not been one of their priorities.
Yeah, unfortunately. Okay. I have Jana, the ground covered with gravel or wood chip mulch, but I think we heard it was turf and tires.
So the park area will be turf tires, that kind of recycled tire mix for the kids. It's softer. The houses will have kind of I'm not sure what to call it. I'm looking at like my backyard to see what I have, but it's kind of the same thing that I have. It's kind of like that rocky mixture. I guess it's gravel. It's a different color than the gravel I'm used to. I would call it kind of a natural look. We aren't doing wood chips. I'll put it that way. So I think it's kind of the similar layout that you would have in most homes, in the Tucson area.
Let's see. I know there's a question about, it's not a question. Turf and rubber. If you put turf and rubber on the land, is that more about city living than being in harmony with the desert? Okay, what innovative water harvesting or reclamation will be used?
Oh, sorry, there were two questions. I wasn't sure which one.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I was mumbling. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I was reading mumbling. Are you using any innovative water harvesting or reclamation?
I wouldn't call it innovative. It's probably a million-year-old tactic. So when we designed the kind of the overall landscape of the subdivision, there's a retainage pond on the back half of the property that feeds back into. So what the tribe does is we get our water from the city of Tucson, kind of like everybody else, but we also collect water throughout different places on the reservation, and that's what we use mostly for groundwater for the areas that do have grass. So there's like the baseball fields and those kinds of things. So to participate in that, there's a huge, not huge, but there's a retainage area that one helps with water runoff and make sure that all the water doesn't flood the homes, but it also is going to collect that water and then it pumps back into the overall watering system that the tribe uses. So it's not a direct water reclamation system. I know that's a kind of a big thing. Cost-wise, again, we just couldn't really figure it out in this phase. But certainly, we're using that retainage to kind of help with that for the overall reservation. And is the one above that a question? I think somebody was asking, or maybe making a comment about the soil and the turf and rubber. Is that a question? I'm not sure.
I think it's a comment to all of us about a master gardener's lecture that we have no organic. So, Jana, and I know it's getting late, we're gonna go over a little bit, but Jana, do you want to unmute yourself and ask the question?
Hi, Keith. This is Jana. Here in Tucson, the sustainability community is really passionate about rainwater harvesting and particular earthworks. And Sustainable Tucson, for instance, has a habitat restoration committee that is encouraging people to dig up their yards, dig up all that gravel and plastic that keeps the water from sinking in and restoring our aquifer, because we actually use our aquifer here to store our drinking water. And so we're trying to restore my concern is having all the more gravel instead of starting with more earthworks. And so my challenge to you is to look into rainwater harvesting and earthworks. And there's some wonderful tours and classes at Watershed Management Group. And they have a living lab tour if you want to go check that out, where you can do a self-guided tour anytime, or free rainwater harvesting rebate classes. And we're really trying to get people to stop doing that xeriscaping stuff. So this is really frustrating to hear you come from somewhere else and not be doing what we feel that will make Tucson sustainable in the future, and help us to have a sustainable water supply here in Tucson, and to water all those millions of trees, because we're using the water from the streets instead of it all evaporating. We're using it, we're keeping it in our yards and our properties and our apartment complexes, and we're using it to water edible trees, you know, like our edible native trees. So please, you know, I challenge you to go look more into that, because I think you could incorporate this into your, and it would be more true to living off of the land for Native Americans who did that.
So I will tell you this, Jana. One, challenge accepted. I appreciate that, and I will tell you, being an outsider, you know, I've been here going on 3 years now, but I still feel, you know, so much that I don't know, and I know I don't know. So one, I absolutely appreciate your comment, and I appreciate you kind of giving me that information. If you could either message me directly or let Karen, if there's any information that you have about that, because I honestly thought that the xeriscaping was what we were doing. I thought that was cool. So, you know, I didn't know. So if there's something, you know, that can be done to kind of do this differently and in a way that's even more sustainable or makes more sense environmentally, I'm all for that. You know, I made the mistake one time of telling, I was giving a presentation. I told some people at the tribe that I'm not hugely into environmental sustainability, which, I mean, admittedly, I'm not an expert in it at all. And it's never been at the forefront of my mind in a lot of the aspects. Coming from Chicago, we asphalt everything, and we just build what we build, and it is what it is.
And
So,
we're actually digging that stuff up. So there's co-ops with Watershed Management Group that go into lots that have been just covered, you know, because it is a driving city. And so we're finding lots that have parking lots, and we're digging up that asphalt. And it's called planting the rain. When you take that water and you use it to water those trees, because how are we going to water all those trees that we're planting? One, if they're not native trees. Two, if we're not using the water that comes from the sky here in Tucson. So
I don't disagree. Like I said, I totally accept your challenge, and would love to, if there's any information or resource or things that I can go look at, or groups that I can kind of hear more about this on. I would love to learn more. So by all means.
I appreciate that, Keith.
Thank you.
And let's see, I have Barbara's asked about, have you heard of Solar Citizens United? It's a co-op, right, Barbara? Lower cost and enhances quality. They're working in Tucson now. I think, Barbara, if you want to unmute, but also I think if people will, how would I do this? I would like to give people Keith's contact information, because there are a lot of good conversation going back and forth about this project and what we bring to the table to help. So where would I put that?
I can put it in the chat if you want.
Okay, why don't you do that? And I want to, from Chuck to everyone and it says, I guess they left. Thank you, Keith. Solid start on a world-class development. Hoping that future projects will incorporate solar, rainwater, harvesting, etc. See, we're behind you with suggestions. Is everyone seeing that? I'll copy it. Here's one from Sandra. Keith, you're not an outsider. The world is one for all. Environmental strategies are developing and happening successfully, but we are the ones that are failing you. You deserve being informed, not challenged. I welcome your enthusiasm. We are more ignorant about native sovereignty than you may be about the environmental solutions.
No,
I know. I feel very ignorant about native sovereignty.
I appreciate that. I think, I think my approach has always been no matter what you're doing, what I'm doing anyway, I'm always wanting to know more, and I'm always wanting to learn more. And this experience in Tucson has been just amazing. And I have to tell people all the time, because people ask, well, how have you survived? Because you're a city boy and you're used to all this. And I was like, well, you know, I really, really need to sit down drive with the Phoenix. But what I always tell people is like, you know, it's not the city of Tucson that makes Tucson. It's the people. It's the people of Tucson that make this place amazing, and it's the reason that I have decided that I want to be here, and that I get excited about things that happen here. It's that, you know, this is a huge city. It's a 500,000 people, but it's not. It doesn't feel like it, and that's an accomplishment. When a city that large feels like a small community, you've done something right, and I think that's what you know, excites me about being here. And I love that I've been able to work with the tribe, because I sit in this kind of interesting space between the tribe and those who aren't part of the tribe, and I can actually, I think people get to see that, you know, the tribe is welcoming of everybody, and they are happy to teach anybody anything you want to know about the history. I mean, they have like these culture classes, and I'm learning the language. It's so cool. So, you know, I appreciate that. I really do, and I'm excited to learn more about Tucson, and learn how to, you know, how to be a Tucsonan too. So, you know,
There
how
you
to.
go. Well, I mean, you nailed it. I think everyone agrees that Tucson still has a small town feel, even though we are large and we sprawl. We have a wonderful community. So I'm gonna, anyone want to ask
Can
a
I
question?
answer my question?
Oh yeah, Barbara, please
Okay.
answer the solar question.
Yeah.
Then we're gonna have to say goodbye.
Okay. Well, quickly, I totally agree with the feeling about Tucson having moved back here from Denver and before that Chicago. So Solar Citizens United is an organization that's in a number of states. It's been here in Tucson recently. It develops it's a co-op model, and it signs up people who are interested in putting solar on their homes, and negotiates then with installers to get reduced rates at the best quality possible. And we've gotten about 50 people signed up in Tucson through that organization. Something to check out for this other community in the future. It's a less expensive way to put solar on, and the best quality.
So Barbara, I think if you would grab my contact information and shoot me an email with yours. The reason I say that, we as a tribe are trying to, one of the big projects that we're doing for health reasons is we're replacing everybody's swamp coolers with AC units and ductwork and all that. But as part of that project, we are hoping to also, talking about, you know, installing solar for all of the rental units that the tribe owns, the older rental units. We're trying to install solar on those. We haven't figured out exactly a funding source, but if you and your organization, you know, have means of kind of negotiating, or even just have a start, I mean, we're talking about somewhere in the area of 500 units that we would be putting solar on. So, you know, we're trying to get a grant to do it, but if there's an opportunity to work together with Solar Citizens United, I would love to make that connection.
Okay. So I did say, now it's up to Keith, and it's up to all the people who are left in the meeting. If you have more questions, you want to make comments, I don't have to shut us down, but it is 6 o'clock. So it's up to
As long as
Keith.
you want to look at
And
me.
it's up to anybody who has any questions. But you have to unmute yourself. Okay, so let's see. Okay, any more? And
There was also an organization in town through the U of A. There's a lot of great kind of research being done on different kinds of things about rainwater harvesting. And I believe that one of the instructors is doing low, like the same kind of housing that you're doing, the limited income housing, and they're doing it sustainably. And so I can send you that if I find it, but it was one of our speakers at one of our Sustainable Tucson meetings, and those houses looked awesome. And they were going to do it for, you know, the limited income thing. So I can send that to you, but I also put my email address there, jana@sustainabletucson.org. You can contact me, but I think there's resources for what you're trying to do.
Yeah, again, I would love to figure out how to do it. So you say that's sustainable. Hey, so I have a question, and this is just kind of me not knowing things, and I figure if any group in the city of Tucson can answer this question for me, this group can. I get in this argument with people all the time because I am truly ignorant about the subject, so I want to know. Um, Water falls from the sky, comes from the rivers, right? We get it in our houses, right? I pour it out of my sink and I use it for whatever. I water the yard, all these different things, right? I don't water the yard because we don't have any grass, um, but I always hear the comment that we have to conserve the water, right? And I never understand that because in my head, and I know I'm wrong because people tell me all the time we need to conserve water, so I know I'm missing something. Where does the water go that we lose it, right? Because if I run the shower for 3 hours, right, the water goes down the drain, it goes back to the treatment plant, they clean it, they send it back to somebody else. Does it go like I lose? I don't understand where the water that isn't that I don't drink. Where does it go? Where that I've always wanted to know the answer to that question.
Oh, wow. Tucson Water is really awesome that they do tours of what they do, but it actually, they clean a lot of the water from our toilets and from our drains. It gets clean, but the amount of water that they do that, it takes a lot of water, and chemicals to clean our water to give it back to us. But there's a lot of the water here in Tucson goes to landscaping. So that's why, like, even if you're doing that, like that desert landscaping thing, that a lot of people still have emitters. And a huge portion of our water goes to this landscaping, but people can use water you get a ton of water off of your roof, and you can just direct that to water some native trees, and you would save a whole bunch of water. And our water comes from the Colorado River, CAP, and we share that water. It's pumped 326 miles uphill using a whole dirty coal power plant to get us our water here in Tucson and in Phoenix. And we share that same water with California and I think Utah, even Mexico, and we're running out of that water. So if we can even just get people to water their yards with rainwater, that will make a huge difference. And we just won't use as much of the water, of that water. And right now we're storing that CAP water in our aquifer so that, we can use it in the future. And we're storing some of actually Phoenix's water in the aquifer as well. But yeah, we actually we drink the water that is that is stored in our aquifers. So there's so many possibilities. And there's something called, you might want to look up curb cuts because you can use this like a curb CURB, and it's essentially like using the water that comes on the street. Generally, our water is all pushed out into the streets to evaporate, or it goes down a drain and then it goes off, into the river and heads towards Marana and may or may not. Some of it sinks into the river and some of it evaporates. But if you keep all that water on the property, to water the landscaping, then that's all water that we don't have to use from Colorado River water. So that's one of the things to be sustainable is that we get so much rain. Usually this summer we haven't, but we get so much rain during our monsoon season. There's enough rain in Tucson from our monsoon season and our winter rains for everybody that is in Tucson right now. Okay, if everybody did rainwater harvesting, but so few people do rainwater harvesting. But those of us that are passionate about it are working hard. We're working in co-ops. We're digging that plastic and gravel out of other people's yards so that they can sink in the rain and they can water their yards with organic wood chip mulch and the stuff that naturally falls, into your yard from your leaves, from your trees and stuff like that, which will make our grounds and soils like have organic matter, again, but we've just covered everything with gravel or asphalt, and we don't have to do that. We can be an example to the world about how we can bring Tucson back to more of our natural habitat that attracts birds and other different animals. My yard is becoming a paradise for birds because I've got native trees in my yard now. And Dan has spent a year, like every weekend, digging out all the plastic and gravel out of our yards. And And he used to do that with other people's yards with watershed management group at the co-ops. And they're doing that at churches and they're doing that at businesses. And one of the requirements of new businesses coming in is they have to get a certain amount of their water from rainwater harvesting. And one of the ways they do it is this curb cuts is they cut a curb, you know, they cut a hole in the curb. And then on one side of that curb is a basin with wood chip mulch. And on the high end of that basin is a native tree. And they water that tree with the water that comes off of the streets. So there's all these exciting things that we're doing right here in Tucson, that the Pima County is doing it, the city of Tucson, our mayor is doing it, all this stuff. And you could be a part of that whole thing where we're an example, you know, to the rest of the world on how we're going to restore our natural native environment as much as we can in the city, you know? So,
well, hey, like I mentioned, I'm all about maintenance, so I would definitely, you know, engage.
thank you. I really appreciate that.
I also gonna add, bring up water in Tucson. You'll get an answer. We are very passionate about protecting a dwindling resource. So I think Sandra, were you talking to Keith about contacting you, or were you speaking to someone else in the chat?
Oh, no, yes. I was putting my information available to him in case that he wants to reach out to any U of A faculty or a researcher that are working currently on water. I joined Corny Crosson for one project on water harvesting and, well, the social impacts and a study about how the adoption works here in Tucson. So, but that's something that I can do. And I also have some links with the Dine College at the Navajo Nation, in case that is also a good idea. They know already the pathway for adopting some sustainability strategies in a way that is also respectful for the sovereignty of the lands. And myself, I'm not from here, I'm from Mexico City. So I am truly a person who's coming from a completely 100% different environment, because I'm from a big city that is only compared to big cities like Tokyo or LA or New York. But at the same time, I'm from a developing country. So there is something that I can tell you, and I can inform the audience of this call as well. It is very easy to tell people what to do when you already prove the path. But when you're the first time owner, or the first time in a developed country, or the first time joining a developed city or a developed development, it is very easy to tell you for people to tell, don't do this. While your dream is to have that opportunity to have a jar with the fruit tree, with the swing in one of the branches, and those American dream pictures that we all share. So, and I am not talking on behalf of the Native Nation. I am talking on behalf of a migrant that is coming to the US for the first time, and that's the American dream. So it took me 12 years to erase that image from my mind. And it's because I have a PhD in arid lands, and it took me a PhD to realize that that dream is not exactly the dream for the Tucson Desert. But we all have the right to dream, and we all have the right to bring our dreams to come true in a better way. But that's only happening if we are instructed and helped, not challenged, not pointed out as somebody that doesn't know something. So we welcome enthusiasm, knowledge, and that capability of be amazed of our opportunities. Sorry for my dog. I just want to say that I think we all have the dream to, draw our own dream, and then start putting pieces in place and making better solutions together. And we all welcome you, Keith, to all of us. I probably speak on behalf of all of us that we are here through Karen to help you out when you need it and in the capability that you need it. Sustainability is not a single language. It's as much as you can do with your opportunities, your tools, your ideas, but I will add with your dreams.
I appreciate that, and thank you very much. Thank you to the whole group. I think, again, even I have learned some things, in the time that I've been on this call, or on this chat. So I am just super inspired by. I think all of you have some very very interesting points of view, and there's a lot. Like I said, this whole chat, I'm sitting here copying the chat so I can make sure that I have all the information, because there's just so much information. And for me, as I look at hopefully having a career in development in this, hopefully with the tribe, but wherever I want to, I want to use the things that I learned to make the next project and the next project and every project that gets better and better, so that we are to a point where I want one of those projects that has, I don't know if it's even possible, but a negative impact. I want the project to give back to the environment. So I am really appreciate everybody who's added things on the chat and been offering up information and assistance, and I will do my best to reach out to everybody who's given their contact information. You have mine, it's a little earlier up. Reach out to me, let's make that connection and start talking about ways that that not just on these projects that we're doing on the reservation, but just me as a citizen of Tucson, how can I be engaged in a lot of the things that are going on. There's so much here that I didn't realize was going on. And I think if there's even sometimes, I know for me, just being a part of groups sometimes is super helpful, because one, obviously you get to meet awesome people like all of you. But also, I'm the kind of person, I just absorb information. I love knowledge and I love information. That whole thing about the giraffe's tongue, when the guy told me, was like the most exciting thing in the world to me, because it's just a little piece of information. So I love having that information, because you never know when having it stored up and being able to share it with somebody will make a difference in the way they go about their life. And to your point, Sandra, about being able to dream, I think that's exactly like you said. That's America, right? That's what you come. That's why people come from all over to be here, wherever you end up. You just want to have that thing, whatever your vision of it is. I'm a city boy, so I'm adapting, right? Because I drive around sometimes and I'm like, where are all the tall buildings? But it's not necessary here. And I have a pool, which I would have never had in Chicago. Like, I have a pool. It's so cool. So I have, my dreams are always evolving, and I think that's probably the way a lot of people are. You get to a point and you see things differently, you see the world differently. I am certain that 18-year-old Keith would not have wanted the things that 40-year-old Keith wants. But it's great to be able to dream, and it's great to have people around you that encourage you to dream. So I thank you all for the sharing, the listening to me ramble on for an hour, all of it. So thank you all very, very much.
We're very, very, thank you very much. And I think all of us, for talking back and forth and learning things. So that's what, kind of what Climate Tucson is about, is learning what we can do and what we can do better and what we need to learn going forward. So Jana and Sandra, everyone who, and Barbara participated in the questions, thank you so much. And Keith is a factoid collector. And I appreciate that, I'm always remembering just silly little things. And, I can tell you one no, it's too late. Anyway, thank you all. I'm going to end it now. And thanks again. Thanks, Keith. And
thank you all.
Okay, bye-bye.
Great hearing about your project.
No, thank you so much.
It was. Thank you. Oh, wait a minute. One thing. Do we all get a tour?
So we are.
Invite us back for some kind of tour, so that when we can go out, when we go out.
So hopefully we can get through COVID. So we're planning. We're supposed to close on the project in December, and we will be doing a groundbreaking, ideally in perfect time of year, late January, early February, for a groundbreaking. At whatever point we are past COVID, or even if we're not, we can figure out how to do it with the restrictions in place. But yes, we will absolutely invite you all back, give you a tour, especially either during construction or once we got some stuff built, so you can see it go in a house. See what I would love to do that. Yes, that's great. Well, we will plan that as soon as it's possible. Excellent. That sounds great. Yeah. Good night, everyone. Good night. Thank you. See, and I can figure out how to turn it off.